Coming to the term of stagflation, same as inflation, it is an economic situation where you see a slow growth of economy coupled with a steady increase in unemployment, and most importantly it is a rise in prices. So it is a situation where you see slow economic growth, steady increase in unemployment and rise in prices, that is inflation. So it is again a typical situation in economic cycle. So it is normally seen during the economic cycle. All right, that means so every economy moves from one stage to the other stage. So it is a cyclic phenomena, right? There will be a growth, right, and this growth is followed by a stagnancy, right? Growth is followed by stagnation. Then we see, right, a slowdown, that is slowdown, and if a chance even there can be recession, again there will be a growth, right? So all this is a cyclic process, right? Simply it is stagnation in the economy coupled with inflation, that is coupled with high prices. That is what stagflation is. So this term stagflation was first used in 1965 by McLeod, right? It is, right, Leon McLeod who for the first time has used this word, what we call stagflation, to refer this situation in Britain, all right, a situation where there is stagnation along with inflation, right? He is the one who has used the word, who has termed the word stagflation, right? Combined effects of inflation and stagnation is stagflation, all right? So, and sometimes if you take the efforts of government, even governments may take measures to boost the economy when there is stagnation, and when there is such economic policy followed by government, so there will be a temporary rise in prices. Remember, the temporary rise in prices can be attributed to the efforts made by government to boost the economy during the situation of stagnation, so which may even lead to stagflation. But as of now, stagflation means it is a combined effects of all these things: a slow economic growth, increased unemployment and rise in prices, right? Simply to say, stagnation coupled with inflation, that is what stagflation is. Going to the next term, it is structural inflation, right? Structural inflation, which is also called as bottleneck inflation. It is also called as bottleneck inflation. So this structural inflation or bottleneck inflation, it is caused because of mismatch between demand and supply. Particularly, it is caused because of supply side constraints, right? This mismatch is because of supply side constraints. That is, when there is no adequate supply of goods because of lack of production. So when there is a stagnancy in production, when there is no adequate production, right, obviously the supply of goods in the market will be less, and because of high demand for such goods, there will be increased inflation. So this inflation is called as structural inflation or bottleneck inflation, which is caused because of lack of supply of goods and increased demands, right? So normally this phenomenon is seen in, right, developing economies, particularly, right, economies which are facing the problem of investments. So when there is no adequate investments or when there is no adequate capital flow for producing goods, then the availability of goods and services will be less, right, to meet the demands. So because of this situation, there will be inflation, and such an inflation is called as structural inflation or bottleneck inflation. All right. So this is, so when you write when you write, so when you want to talk about inflation, the causing factors behind inflation. So this is the most important causing factor behind inflation. All right. So this is one term that you should remember. Coming to the next term, it is skewflation. It is skewflation. The next term for our discussion is skewflation. So skewflation denotes right, an episodic rise, right, episodic rise in prices of few goods and services. Remember, it is a rise in prices. It is a rise in prices of few goods and services. A rise in price of few goods and services. Right? That means it is price of few goods and services, right, will rise for certain time. It is for certain time, for some time, not continuous increase. It is, right, what you call as increase in price for certain period of time, not of all the goods. It is few goods, whereas, right, majorly the price of all other goods will be stable. Right, price of all other goods and services will be stable when compared to these few goods. This situation is called as skewflation. This situation is called as skewflation. All right. So if you take inflation, inflation denotes general rise in prices of goods and services over a period of time. That means it is a rise in prices. Inflation is a rise in price of goods and services, right, over a period of time, not for short time, over a longer period of time. And if it is skewflation, it is a rise in prices only for short time. Inflation, it is majority of the goods or all the goods, whereas skewflation, it is only few goods. So make this difference between inflation and skewflation. So skewflation denotes an episodic rise. Episodic rise, that is a temporary rise in prices of goods and few goods and services. All right. So this is about skewflation.